It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It seems like it was 10 days ago, but it doesn't seem like it's 10 days ago, but I guess it pretty much was. You know, the media been telling us for a while the caravan south of the border doesn't exist. And then, of course, it did exist because then they had all the stories of the tear gas that was used. And can you believe that Trump would because nobody's ever done it. That's not true, obviously. Other presidents have had to use tear gas at the border before. And that prompted the socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She compared the migrant caravan to Jews fleeing the Holocaust. Can you believe this? Hundreds tried to storm the border. And this was, you know, I couldn't believe it when this happened. That, here's her tweet. Asking to be considered a refugee and applying for status isn't a crime. It wasn't for Jewish families fleeing Germany. It wasn't for targeted families fleeing Rwanda. It wasn't for communities fleeing war-torn Syria. And it isn't for those fleeing violence in Central America. So there we go. We have the comparison of the Holocaust there. So I wanted to bring in Rabbi Arey Spero joins us. Of course, he is the author of the book Push Back, Reclaiming the American Judeo-Christian Spirit. Rabbi Spero, welcome back to the program, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
What was your reaction when you heard this?
Well, my reaction was, I like you say, what do you call her? Ocasio? I like that. But this is more than just her typical Ocasio. This is really obscene. They're exploiting the Holocaust for their leftist goals. They want open borders because they can do what they want with elections that way. Once these people get into the country, even though we're illegal, we have two things that happen. Either one, you have places like California that say that illegals can vote, or you have other places that say, well, illegals can't vote, but they somehow make sure that they vote anyways. And so they're just going to win every election, and they'll transform America into the socialist state that they want, with a ruling class being the ones who will control America, and we, the middle class, paying the taxes for all of the freebies that the illegal immigrants will have, that the American taxpayer himself does not have. But it's obscene because the Jewish people, during the time of the Holocaust, they were hunted down by the Gestapo. They were put on trains for torture at concentration camps and killed. Hitler decided a full-scale genocide against the Jewish people to destroy them. Every Jewish family was set upon for destruction. We're here. No one in Honduras is going after all of these families and saying we're going to kill you, make you extinct. No one's doing that. No one's rounding them up and putting them in concentration camps. They can live in Honduras. They were offered residency in Mexico. The Jews weren't offered residency anywhere. If they stayed in Europe, they were dead. So it's obscene to make this comparison, besides being just wrong. But they do it. The left does this because it works, because nobody wants to have a Holocaust again. People feel guilty about it, and they say, oh, if this is a Holocaust or a shred of a Holocaust, let's not do it, and we'll just open up the border. So that's why they do it, because it works with a lot of people.
And I agree with you about, you know, their long-term goals. They want open borders because it eventually will translate, they know, to more votes. And you know, you've heard people say that these elites that are running things, they really do need like a permanent underclass. That's why they don't like the middle class. And so more illegal immigration means lower wages it means a dwindling middle class and everything else. But I'd like to get your opinion on this concept of open borders, because there are a lot of people on the left that, you know, they see these people at the border and they just, you know, their heart breaks and they think that the right is evil. Why wouldn't we let them in? Why wouldn't we help them? And, you know, a lot of it's millennials. And I just think to myself, you know, why is it that the idea of having a border and controlling who comes and who goes Why is that such a politically incorrect thing today? And because it's one of the most foundational things of civilization, period, is that you have borders and you get to distinguish between, who gets to come in, which country you're in, and that sort of thing. So I know that's a really loaded question, but why do you think, especially millennials, are having such a hard time with this?
Well, they have a hard time with it because borders means sovereignty. It means nationhood. It means nationalism. And they're being raised by their left-wing teachers and the left-wing media that nationalism is bad and nationhood is bad, sovereignty is bad, because really if you're a worldwide socialist, a leftist, you don't believe in borders. There's no such thing as nationhood. It's all just one global fraternity. I mean, even a guy like Obama, I don't know that he considers himself a citizen of the United States as much as a citizen of the world. So the whole idea of borders, which means each country is sovereign, that it has laws that govern it, not the United Nations, and not the EU, and not the International Court, and not The Hague. This is against leftist thinking, so they don't like it. As far as letting these immigrants in, I assure you that if the people that wanted to come in were a bunch of evangelical Christians or Likudniks, people from the Likud in Israel, you wouldn't see the left clamoring for all of this immigration entry. Really not. They see these people as future welfare recipients, voting Democrat, transforming the country, all part of this multiculturalism, so they're for it. But I don't see any of them really, none of them stood up. You have a genocide against Christians, biblical Christians, all over Africa and the Middle East. I don't see the left clamoring to bring these people in, and they don't seem to be clamoring to. I can tell you one thing, the few Israelis that were Likud types that wanted to come to America during the Obama administration, their passports were not recognized for this reason or that. So it's very selective, very, very selective. But you have to have borders because if not, jihadists can come in, criminals, MS-13 gang members, people with diseases, people that are mules for drug lords. Some of the millennials, they're not ideological, they're just shallow. And they just think that, hey, there's no problem. There's no problem with anything. And everything always will work out. And they've been taught that Republicans, conservatives, patriots, Americans are mean. That's all. Listen, I just saw an article where 1/5 of the millennials think that the American flag is a symbol of hate.
Gosh. Yeah.
These are our grandchildren. Look how they've been taught.
I like what you said. We're talking with Rabbi Arey Spero, political analyst. Again, he's author of the book Pushback, Reclaiming the American Judeo-Christian Spirit. You can get it on Amazon. What you said about, borders mean sovereignty, and it dawned on me, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to figure this out, but in the same sense, in America, we have what are supposed to be sovereign states that, have different laws, maybe different ways of doing things. And that sort of is true now, but not nearly the way it was. The bigger federal government has essentially, taken a lot of that sovereignty away from the states by giving our own money back to us with strings attached and making sure that we pass the laws that they want. And that's what the left likes. They like that, and that's how they see the world. And so to me, it just kind of clicked. Okay, well, that's why they don't want us to have sovereign nations. It's the same principle on a much larger scale.
Bingo, very good. They don't want local control. They don't like the idea of states' rights or local control, local school boards, because they themselves want to control everybody's life. Just when I grew up in the 50s, early 50s, it was understood that the greatness of America was local control. People of a given city, community, from the schools to zoning to most laws, marriage, divorce, all of these things, they decided their own fate. But you've got these control freaks, these social engineers out in New York and Washington, and now in certain places in San Francisco and Silicon Valley and L.A. These are control freaks. They want to social engineer every decision of everybody all across this country. The Founding Fathers made a country that was different than other countries. It wasn't ruled by a king or a grand state or socialism. Local control, that was Madison spoke about it. But the liberal control freaks, they want to social engineer every aspect of your life. So that's a very good point. I never thought about it. The same way they're against local control, state rights, they're against national borders, national sovereignty.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, it just was something that just, all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. That is their vision. It's the same playbook that just continues, to be implemented. Now, thankfully, right now, we have, President Trump, who's in office. We covered last hour, Rabbi Spero, we were talking about what's going on in France. And the media, if they report on what's going on in France with the yellow vests at all, it's about a high gas tax. But if you kind of dive into it, what I am thinking is it's not just about the high gas tax for climate change. It's about the fact that their entire country has been sold out, and the people aren't being considered. Now, that might be called what you just said, nationalism versus this global citizen of the earth mentality. Now, I tell you this, the media will never report that what's going on in France is standing up for nationalism and against globalism.
No, they won't, because they always tell us to be like Europe, and that's because Europe is socialist. But as soon as the people of Europe rise up and say, we don't want to be pawns, faceless pawns, just put down in the name of globalism and socialism and EU, well, they won't report that because they want the American people to feel that we're somehow queer, we're strange, that we want to have local control, or we don't want to give our life over to the deep state and to the ruling class. And so that's why they're not going to report it. Mm-hmm. No way.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting to kind of see what's, how things are going to continue to spread. And I do think, from Brexit to the election of Donald Trump, I think we're seeing a lot of interesting developments. Donald Trump's approval rating is in the high 40s or in the 50s, and he's somehow terrible. But Emmanuel Macron is great, but his approval rating in his own country is like at 22%.
In France and in Germany and even America, there's all the money in the world for every illegal immigrant. As long as they're, if they're Muslim, bring them in. If they're illegals, bring them in. There's no money for the people. You've got to tax the people in France even higher on their gasoline for some concocted environmental thing. So you tax the middle class again, but yet there's all this money for those illegals that they think will vote Democrat or will come in and change the culture in the name of religion or Sharia. For them, there's all the money in the world.
Yeah, and it's quite, there's certainly something that is totally out of balance in terms of, these people that claim that they want, democracy, and yet they really don't want the people to have a say in the affairs because the elites think they can live their lives, better, make the decisions for them. Rabbi Arey Spero, it's always great to have you on, sir, and I really appreciate you spending time with us this morning.
Well, thank you. I'm now right on Pennsylvania Avenue, going to watch the procession of President Bush on the way to the National Cathedral.
Wow. Is it a pretty somber, reverent environment up there right now?
Well, it is and it isn't. It depends where you go. I was at the Trump Hotel last night, and it wasn't so somber. People pay their respects, but then he lived a nice, long life, and life has to go on. But it's respect for America, the presidency, and what we've done historically. So I've got to go down right now to the street.
All right. Well, Rabbi Spero, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
All righty.